Welcome to part 1 out of 2 in this mini-series where I will be showing you common problems with heavenly tourism, books and movies that are sold by the millions all around the world. The ignorance, the interest and the cash flow runs high when it comes to heavenly tourism. The amount of people that just eats this material up is quite disturbing, and the claims we typically get from heavenly tourists are something that Christians should take with highest discernment. This is walking on extremely thin ice, and some of what we find in these heavenly tourism stories does not sit well with Orthodox Christianity. As a matter of fact, some of them are raising some serious biblical and theological problems that should definitely not be just overlooked. But we will look more into that in part 2. Here and now in part 1, I want to show you a couple of examples of inter-contradictions as well as intra-contradictions. If you'll ever dig into heavenly tourism, you'll be quite surprised of how common these often are. Now, I want to keep these 2 videos in this mini-series on a more YouTube-friendly length, so addressing all the problems and examples would simply just be too time-consuming. So the examples I will be using will be a couple of the bestseller ones that came out of USA. My goal here with this mini-series is to present to you a 4-way critical test method that you can apply yourself to these multi-millions of dollars books and movies. Again, these are stories from people who claim to have been to heaven. You know, heaven, the actual realm where the holy God, creator and sustainer of the entire universe, dwells in his full holiness. This is not a small claim. Here's the thing. When all these modern heavenly tourism stories claim to be true, but contradict each other when comparing them to one another, logically speaking then, they cannot all be true. And that's what we call inter-contradictions. If studying and comparing all these different stories, you'll see a fair amount of these. And let me just give an example. According to Heaven is Revealed by Colton and Todd Burpo, people in heaven have wings. But according to Don Piper, who wrote 90 Minutes in Heaven, people in heaven have no wings. By the way, Lynn Vincent, the ghostwriter of Heaven is Revealed, was reluctant to include Burpo's statement that except from Jesus, everybody in heaven have wings and fly places, being concerned that Orthodox Bible-believing Christians will then soon call out the book as a hoax. Well, the book and movie has been sold and translated by the millions, so it's safe to say that she thought too highly of the discerning skills of Christians. When digging deeper into these heavenly tourism stories, one quickly comes to realize that oftentimes they are not just contradicting one another, oftentimes they are contradicting themselves. And this is what's called intra-contradictions. Let me just give you one example using the other popular book that I just mentioned, 90 Minutes in Heaven by Don Piper. Out of the 205 pages in this book, only 15 pages are spent on describing his 90 minutes of actually being there in heaven. Now there's a lot I could have said about that, but I will not go there now. Anyway, we get a lot of specific information about things that he saw and heard in heaven on those 15 pages. Like for example on page 33 of his 2004 book, where he states loud and clear that, "I did not see God. I saw no luminous glow that might have indicated his divine presence." Now watch this video clip from one of his sermons, recorded 7 years after his book came out.
And absorbing how great the mansions were, and then I began to look up through the gate, and I could see this kind of pinnacle in the middle of the city. It's kind of a hill high and lifted up. There's a river flowing down the side of this, well, it's the river of life, and it's coming down the side of this mountain or hill, if you will, and at the top of that is the brightest light I've ever seen, and I know who that is. It's the Lord high and lifted up. This is his city.
So which one is it? Did not see God? Did not see a luminous glow indicating God's divine presence? Or what his story jumped up to 7 years later?
And at the top of that is the brightest light I've ever seen, and I know who that is. It's the Lord high and lifted up.
Personally, I can't think of anything more memorable and real than seeing the holy God, the Alpha and Omega, the creator and sustainer of the entire universe, in his luminous holy glow in heaven. Yet, this did not make it into his book. It actually directly contradicts his own book. My friends, this is not just a mere oversight. Alright, in part 2, we will look at some serious biblical and theological problems within heavenly tourism. So don't miss that one. When this video is finished now, I will encourage you to please pray for these people. If you made it all the way over here and you haven't already, consider to subscribe and check out some of the other videos on this channel. Like, comment, share, hashtag, all that kind of activity helps boosting the YouTube algorithms and expose this channel and ministry to more people. Thank you and God bless.
Read the Bible. Read the Bible.